Kylian Mbappé was born in Bondy, a suburb northeast of Paris, where ambition is strong but opportunity is fragile. It is a place where talent alone is never enough. From his earliest years, Mbappé's environment shaped his mentality before it shaped his football. Discipline was not imposed later in life. It was present from the very beginning. His father, Wilfried Mbappé, worked as a football coach and understood the structure of the game. His mother, Faiza Lamari, was a professional handball player who knew the cost of high-level competition. In their household, sport was treated seriously, not as entertainment, but as preparation. While many children discovered football through play, Mbappé approached it with focus. Training sessions were intentional, movements were repeated, mistakes were corrected. He was taught early that talent without discipline fades quickly. This foundation created something rare, a young player who enjoyed football deeply, but never confused joy with complacency. Even as a child, Mbappé understood that improvement was a daily obligation. Speed was the first trait that caught everyone's attention. Not just pace over long distances, but explosive acceleration in the first few steps. He could create separation almost instantly, turning tight spaces into open lanes. Defenders struggled not because they reacted slowly, but because Mbappé anticipated faster. His mind operated ahead of the play. He understood where defenders would be, not where they were. That mental advantage became as important as his physical gifts. At Clairefontaine, France's most prestigious football academy, Mbappé entered an environment designed to test the country's best young talents. Pressure was constant. Competition was ruthless. Many gifted players struggled to adapt. Mbappé didn't. He absorbed the structure, embraced the discipline, and elevated his game. Coaches noticed his maturity, his professionalism, and his unusual calm. He listened carefully, adjusted quickly, and rarely repeated the same mistake twice. What separated Mbappé from others was not arrogance, but certainty. He believed in his path without needing validation. He didn't force plays or chase attention. His confidence was quiet, grounded in preparation rather than hype. This mindset allowed him to progress rapidly, bypassing the mental traps that derail so many young prospects. When AS Monaco gave him his opportunity in the 2016-17 season, Mbappé was ready. At just 18 years old, he delivered performances far beyond expectation. He scored 26 goals in 44 matches, becoming the focal point of a Monaco side that stunned France and Europe. Monaco won the Ligue 1 title, ending Paris Saint-Germain's dominance, and reached the Champions League semifinals, eliminating established giants along the way. On Europe's biggest stage, Mbappé showed no fear. Against elite defenders, he attacked space relentlessly, combining intelligence with raw speed. Goals against top clubs announced his arrival to the world. This was not a player benefiting from a system. This was a player shaping outcomes. Every match reinforced the same message. This was not a temporary rise. It was the beginning of something much larger. By the end of that season, Mbappé's name was everywhere. Scouts, executives, journalists, and fans spoke of him as the future of football. But what made his rise different was how controlled it felt. There was no panic, no rush, just steady progression. He'd already learned something crucial. Greatness is not built in moments of excitement, but in years of preparation. Long before contracts, records, and global attention, Mbappé had built the foundation of his career in Bondy, through discipline, clarity, and belief. The world would soon catch up to what those closest to him already knew. This was not just a talented player emerging. This was a phenomenon being constructed, piece by piece, long before the spotlight arrived. After the historic season with AS Monaco, Kylian Mbappé stood at a decisive moment that few players face so young. At just 18 years old, he was no longer a prospect. He was a commodity, a symbol, and a future superstar. Europe's elite clubs lined up. Real Madrid represented tradition, legacy, and a clear path followed by legends. Yet Mbappé made a different choice. He returned to Paris, not to escape pressure, but to confront it head-on. His transfer to Paris Saint-Germain in 2017 became one of the most expensive in football history, ultimately valued at over 180 million euros. That figure instantly reshaped public perception. Mbappé was no longer protected by youth. Every performance would be judged against the price tag. Every missed chance magnified. Expectations were immediate and unforgiving. From his very first matches, Mbappé showed he was ready. In his debut season with PSG, he scored 21 goals across all competitions, contributing decisively to a domestic treble that included Ligue 1, Coupe de France, and Coupe de la Ligue. His impact went beyond numbers. He brought verticality, unpredictability, and urgency to a team already filled with stars. Playing alongside Neymar and Edinson Cavani required adaptation. Mbappé learned how to coexist with other dominant personalities and elite talents. Instead of forcing his role, he refined it. Sometimes he stretched defenses wide. Other times, he attacked centrally. His ability to switch positions mid-game confused defenders and empowered PSG's attacking system. As seasons passed, Mbappé's development accelerated. He became more than a finisher. He became a complete attacker. His off-the-ball movement improved. His timing inside the box became surgical. He learned when to slow the game and when to accelerate it violently. Defenders faced impossible choices: press him and risk being beaten in a single step, or retreat and allow him space to shoot. Statistically, his rise was relentless. By the age of 22, Mbappé had surpassed 100 goals for PSG, becoming one of the youngest players in history to do so for a major European club. He claimed multiple Ligue 1 Golden Boots, finishing as the league's top scorer several times, and was named Ligue 1 Player of the Year on multiple occasions. His consistency set him apart. Season after season, he delivered elite output. Yet domestic dominance brought its own challenges. Critics argued that Ligue 1 did not test him enough. The Champions League became the ultimate benchmark. Mbappé responded with decisive performances on Europe's biggest stage. Goals against elite opponents showcased his ability to rise under pressure. His pace on the counterattack became one of the most feared weapons in continental football. The 2019-20 Champions League campaign marked a turning point. PSG reached the final for the first time in club history. Mbappé played a crucial role throughout the knockout stages, proving he could influence games even when closely marked and tactically constrained. Though PSG fell short in the final, Mbappé emerged with enhanced stature. He had shown resilience, patience, and tactical intelligence. Off the pitch, pressure never disappeared. Media narratives questioned his leadership, his ego, and his long-term ambitions. Every contract negotiation became global news. Yet Mbappé maintained focus. He rarely responded emotionally. Instead, he let performance speak. Goals continued to arrive. Records continued to fall. By his mid-20s, Mbappé had transformed PSG's identity. He was no longer just part of the project. He was the reference point. The team's rhythm, strategy, and expectations revolved around him. He had embraced responsibility without losing efficiency. From Monaco to Paris, Mbappé's journey was not defined by comfort, but by confrontation. He chose pressure over safety, expectation over ease. And in doing so, he didn't just survive the spotlight, he mastered it. International football is where reputations are tested without mercy. Club form can fluctuate, systems can protect players, but the World Cup exposes everything. In 2018, Kylian Mbappé arrived in Russia as a rising star, not yet a legend. By the end of the tournament, that distinction no longer existed. At just 19 years old, he carried himself with composure, rarely seen even in veterans. From the group stage onward, Mbappé's presence altered games. Defenders dropped deeper. Midfields hesitated. His speed forced teams to abandon aggressive pressing, creating space for France to dominate. Against Argentina in the round of 16, Mbappé delivered one of the defining performances of the tournament. His pace dismantled the defense, earning a penalty and scoring 2 goals. It was the night the world fully understood what he could become. Mbappé finished the tournament with 4 goals, including one in the World Cup final against Croatia. That goal placed him in history as the youngest player since Pelé to score in a World Cup final. France lifted the trophy, and Mbappé received the FIFA World Cup Best Young Player Award, confirming his status as football's next global icon. 4 years later, in Qatar 2022, Mbappé returned not as a prospect, but as a leader. Expectations were heavier, pressure was constant, yet his response was historic. Match after match, he delivered when France needed him most. Goals in the group stage, decisive strikes in knockout rounds, calm penalties under extreme tension. The final against Argentina became one of the most dramatic matches in football history. With France on the brink of defeat, Mbappé scored 2 goals in 2 minutes, then completed a hat-trick in the final, an achievement unmatched in the modern era. He finished the tournament with 8 goals, winning the Golden Boot and becoming the tournament's top scorer. Across just 2 World Cups, Mbappé scored 12 goals, placing him among the competition's all-time greats before turning 24. These were not stat-padding goals. They were goals under maximum pressure. Finals, knockouts, moments where legends are made or forgotten. Mbappé never disappeared. Individually, recognition followed. Multiple Best Player of the Match awards, global acclaim, and continued Ballon d'Or nominations reinforced his position at the top of the game. But what stood out most was not the awards. It was reliability. When everything was at stake, Mbappé was always present. As Kylian Mbappé entered his mid-20s, the conversation around him changed permanently. Talent was no longer debated. Achievements were no longer questioned. What remained was legacy. Every decision, every performance, and every word carried long-term meaning. Mbappé was no longer chasing recognition. He was shaping how he would be remembered. At Paris Saint-Germain, his impact became historic. Season after season, he delivered goals with relentless consistency, eventually becoming PSG's all-time top scorer, surpassing icons who once defined the club. By this stage of his career, Mbappé had already scored more than 300 professional goals, a milestone reached by only a handful of players at such a young age in the modern era. These were not empty numbers. They came in title races, knockout matches, and decisive moments. His evolution as a footballer was just as significant as his statistics. While his explosive speed remained a defining weapon, Mbappé's game matured. His movement became more economical, his finishing more precise, his understanding of space more advanced. He no longer relied solely on acceleration to dominate defenders. He controlled them with intelligence, timing, and positioning. He became a complete forward, capable of deciding games in multiple ways. Leadership followed naturally. Mbappé accepted responsibility in moments when teams looked for direction. He spoke openly about pressure, ambition, and expectations, embracing the role of standard-bearer for both club and country. Younger players didn't just admire his goals, they studied his discipline, his mentality, and his consistency at the highest level. Beyond trophies and records, Mbappé's story represents control in an era where narratives are often imposed on players. He chose ownership over his career, understanding that true greatness is defined not only by what happens on the pitch, but by the decisions made beyond it. His journey reflects confidence, clarity, and an unshakable belief in his own path. And this story is still being written. If you want to keep discovering the untold stories behind football's greatest icons, the pressure, the decisions, and the moments that define legends, this is what Untold Football is about. So like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us, because the next story is already unfolding.